this incredible Joshua fight, give you my expanded analysis on what happened in the fight, and put Joshua's victory in context, because some people are going to give him too much credit for the victory, other people are not going to give him enough credit for the victory. So I want to put his victory in context. Yeah. So let's see if we can get some people in the chat. Let me know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? All right, I'm seeing this live stream is not working at the moment. Not sure what's going on here. You go into the settings. Why is this live stream not working? We're not working at the moment. Why is this live stream not working? Oh man. Seems that nobody can hear me. The live stream is not working. Might have to quit this live stream and start another one to try and get it working. Oh, it's working now. Okay. That nobody can hear me. The live stream is not working. All right, it's working. It's working. It's working. All right, yeah. So shout out to everybody in the chat room. Now, what can I say about this fight? What can I say about Joshua's performance? So on and so forth. Well, yeah, Joshua went through the kind of learning experience in this fight, which most fighters go through at a lower level. For example, Tyson Fury got dropped by Steve Cunningham. He got dropped by Nevin Pikage. He went life and death with. Those were experiences which Tyson Fury needed to give him the fortitude and the confidence and the ring toughness to be able to go in there and beat a Wladimir Klitschko. Mentally, it gave him that. He knew he could go through difficult situations and come out on top. So for Joshua, in only, what was it, his 18th or 19th fight, to go in there and have his first real proper learning experience where he gets dropped and seriously hurt and all that, to have that in a world championship fight in his 18th or 19th fight against Wladimir Klitschko, that is massively impressive, that he was able to hold it together mentally in that situation. Not just in terms of getting dropped and all that, but also in terms of the magnitude of the event. I've always been impressed by Joshua's calmness, under pressure, even though I felt he was nervous, noticeably nervous before this fight. The way he held it together and, after being under pressure in the fight, getting hurt, getting dropped, and managed to come back the way that he did, I'm telling you, Anthony Joshua was massively impressive to me from a mental point of view. He's still got flaws from a technical point of view. He's definitely not the finished article. There's still weaknesses there that other fighters will be able to exploit. But just from a mental point of view, the way he held it down, massive, massive admiration for Joshua. The way he was able to do that. So, yeah. Let me just sort out some of these settings here, people. Where are we at? Okay. Yeah, so drop your comments. I'll get to your comments in just a second. Save this. I'm just looking in the settings here to try and sort out some settings on this stream. Alright, the chat is there. That's good. It was an incredible fight. That fight, some people are going to act as though I'm exaggerating, but let's be real, people. That fight will go down as an all-time heavyweight classic. Yes, Tyson Fury had a much easier time against Vladimir from a boxing perspective. He didn't take as much punishment as Joshua took, but he also didn't inflict as much punishment as Joshua inflicted on Klitschko. Joshua inflicted a lot more damage on Klitschko than Fury did. So, as much as Fury did a better job in terms of making the victory more decisive, because it wasn't a close fight, Fury against Klitschko, he didn't inflict damage on Klitschko the way Joshua did. The fight wasn't as exciting or spectacular. And also, you have to bear in mind that Joshua did that. He beat Klitschko in an earlier stage of his career in terms of number of fights that he's had and type of experiences. When Fury fought Klitschko, he had, I think, 24 or 25 fights when he fought Klitschko, and he'd already been 12 rounds against Kevin Johnson and what have you. He'd been knocked down, he'd come back from knockdowns, and he'd really been battle hardened by the time he got in there with Klitschko. Joshua hadn't been. So that's why, to me, it's very impressive. I hope Tyson Fury gets back in the ring. I hope that he can get this rivalry going with Joshua, because that would be a spectacular fight. Fury against Joshua might break all the records in terms of fights, because the way this fight went down here with Joshua and Klitschko, it delivered in terms of pay-per-view. It delivered, and because it delivered and so many people saw it on the biggest possible stage, on Showtime, on HBO, pay-per-view, 90,000 fans at Wembley, front page news, because it delivered on such a big stage, that is going to raise Joshua's profile through the flipping roof. And just by association, Fury's profile is also going to be raised. So Fury Joshua, that fight is enormous. That fight might be the biggest fight in world boxing by the time it gets made. So I seriously hope Tyson Fury can get himself together and give us that fight, because Joshua will be better as a fighter by the time he fights Fury, if he's still champion. We don't know what's going to happen in some of his next fights. He's got to fight potentially Luis Ortiz next, or Kubrat Pulev. I would fancy him strongly to beat Pulev. Luis Ortiz is a much more difficult fight. So if he's still champion by the time Tyson Fury gets back on his horse, then it's going to be an incredible showdown between Fury and Joshua. So hang on 1 second, people. Sorry. Just sort this out here. I'm going to get to your comments in just a second. Shout out to everybody in the chat room. It's been a bit hectic tonight with with this particular fight, trying to set up this live stream and all that. So alright, let me get to the chat room here. And it's appropriate that the game, you can see the start screen is from the game God of War. God of War 3. That's appropriate, because this fight was a war. What a war that was. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Alright, do I have all the yeah, I think I'll go with the settings right here. Hopefully now. Okay. Let's go to the watch page. Yes, right. Let me get to the comments now. First of all, let me talk about also Wladimir Klitschko. I did mention it in my post-fight video. Klitschko showed the heart of a lion in this fight. Real heart of a lion. The most heart I've ever seen Klitschko show. He came in very light for this fight. He was much lighter than he was against Fury. He looked very fast in this fight, Klitschko. As fast as I've seen him for a long time. And hats off to Klitschko, at 41 years of age, to be able to fight like that. Incredible. All right, Wayne Lovett says Joshua gassed out in round 5. Klitschko just didn't have the engine needed to finish AJ off. Yeah, Joshua did gas out, but he got his second wind. He didn't gas out Frank Bruno style where he gasses out and then he's finished forever. No, he got his second wind. And also, it was a situation where Joshua was tense going into the fight. He was much less relaxed than Klitschko. That was evident from even before the fight. But when they walked to the ring, when they got in the ring, when the first bell went, Wladimir was much more relaxed and Joshua was much more tense. And when you're that tense, it can burn a lot of energy. Yeah, that's one thing you have to understand. This experience will allow Joshua to be a lot more relaxed in subsequent fights. You understand what I'm saying? So when it gets late into the late rounds in future fights, you'll see Joshua not looking as gassed as he was in this fight. I'm telling you that now. Yeah, from a mental point of view, this will do him the world of good to be able to come through crisis like that, you know. So you could see throughout the fight how nervous AJ was. Yeah, AJ was very nervous. He was very nervous. It was a very, very daunting event for a young, inexperienced fighter like that to be part of, you know. It kind of was too soon for Joshua, but going through that kind of experience is only going to improve him as a fighter. It's only going to give him more mental toughness, and he's already a mentally tough guy as it is. Shiv Bart says, I wasn't sure beforehand, but now I think Joshua is the best of the current heavyweight champions. Well, maybe. I would like to see him fight the other heavyweight champions first before I say he's the best, you know. He's certainly the most proven because he's beaten a better fighter than the other heavyweight champions have. You know, Joseph Parker or Deontay Wilder, they haven't fought anybody as good as Klitschko. So he's definitely the most proven, but until he fights a Joseph Parker or a Deontay Wilder, I'm not really going to say he's better than those guys unless he beats them and proves decisively that he's the best guy. You know, I might have an opinion, but he has to go and prove it. So hopefully we'll get these unification fights and we'll see what happens. All right, we got somebody wanting to join the block party here. Let me accommodate him. AJ needs to implement some head movement, very hittable. That wasn't, in my view, the best of Anthony Joshua. You know, yeah, he does need to implement head movement. He needs to do a lot of things. But that, to me, wasn't the best Joshua can box. He can box better than that. You know, you have to bear in mind the pressure that he was under. So he'll improve from that, and we'll see more stuff. Easy says, questions answered about Joshua's chin. I think so. I mean, Joshua don't have an iron jaw. You saw Marius Wack, for example, take those kind of shots from Klitschko and not go down. Whereas Joshua got hit by them shots and he got hurt quite a few times in the fight and obviously went down. Yes, shout out to Seamus McMichael. So Joshua has a chin. He can recover, but he's definitely not iron jawed or anything like that. He's got a hell of a heart though. He has got a hell of a heart. Stickar says, did AJ get exposed? Are you having a laugh? Are you having a laugh? Nikki Dungeon says AJ was really nervous tonight. He was really nervous. And thank you for watching the video, Seamus McMichael. Always locked in. Big up. Every time, Seamus McMichael. Thank you for watching, bro. Who poses the biggest threat to Joshua now? I might make a separate video about that. Umar says, Hatman, big up. Yes, big up, Umar. That contest showed how good Tyson Fury's victory over Vlad was. Yeah, it does. It shows how much better Fury's boxing skills are than Joshua's. Yeah, Fury is a much more skilled boxer. But also, as I said it earlier on in this live stream, Fury was more experienced than Joshua when he fought Klitschko. You have to take that into account. I mean, look how Fury did against Steve Cunningham. He got dropped and he didn't look too clever in that fight. Look how he did against Nevin Pikage. Look how he did earlier on in his career when he was only as experienced as Joshua. So you have to bear this in mind, you know. Fury was what, 24, 25 fights in by the time he fought Klitschko. So, you know, you have to take that into consideration. And also, Fury didn't beat Klitschko much more decisively, but he didn't hurt Klitschko in the fight. He never dropped Klitschko. He never stopped him. So as much as he took much less punishment from Klitschko than Joshua did, he also inflicted much less punishment. So it was a more decisive victory in the sense that, you know, he won fairly easily, but he didn't hurt the guy, you know. You know, one thing I have to say is that Joshua, and this comes down to experience, Joshua, if he had pressured Klitschko more effectively earlier in the fight, I think he could have won earlier. Because as soon as Joshua put his punches together, Klitschko broke down very quickly. I mean, you remember the first knockdown that Joshua scored in the fight? It almost came out of nowhere. It's like Klitschko was getting on top in terms of outboxing Joshua, and then Joshua just came out at the start of one of the rounds, put a attack together, and within seconds, Klitschko was on the floor and he was cut, and it looked like the fight was over. If Joshua had done that more often, you know, gone forward and applied pressure and set a pace, I think he could have got Klitschko out of there. But again, because he's so inexperienced, I guess he wasn't sure about whether that would work. He wasn't sure whether he should take that type of risk. And on top of that, he was dealing with his nerves, and that was taking a lot of energy out of him. Walt Pinkerton says Fury too awkward and has too good ring craft. You know, I'm not convinced that Fury can come back and dominate the division. I've said this many times. For one, Joshua's going to improve from this. And for two, Fury has been abusing his body to a ridiculous extent. And in my experience following boxing over the years, you can't blow up in weight the ridiculous amounts that Fury does and then try and come back down in weight after a massive multiple-year layoff and be the same as you used to be. It's not going to happen. So I'm not convinced by, you know, the people who say that Fury's going to come back and dominate. To be able to dominate, you have to live the life of an athlete. You can't be blowing up in weight and putting on 100 pounds, and I just don't see it ending well for Fury. You know, I think he's still got plenty to offer. I think he's still got some high level wins in the tank, but he's not going to remain undefeated, Tyson Fury. You know, especially not the way he treats his body. And styles make fights at the end of the day. Just because A beats B and B beats C, it doesn't mean that C can't beat A. You understand what I'm saying? Boxing is chess, it's not checkers. Styles make fights. So, you know, I would love to see Fury versus Joshua and find out who's the better out of the two. Fury definitely is the more skilled boxer, but, you know, Joshua the more powerful. Dan the Man says AJ would pressure Fury more than he did Vlad. Yeah, I think so as well. Particularly after AJ um, came through that type of experience where he got dropped and he knows what he can do now. AJ, he knows he can take big punches and come back in a tough fight. That will give him. Oh, against Fury, I do think he would attack Fury and be a lot more aggressive against Fury than he was against Wladimir. Also because Fury don't hit as hard as Wladimir, and also because the kind of tactics that he was trying to use against Wladimir, where he was basically boxing Vlad, that's not going to work with Fury. Fury's got longer arms than Klitschko, and he's an even better boxer than Klitschko is, and he's more awkward, he's more slick. So that kind of stuff is not going to work for AJ if he fights Fury. And Robert McCracken should know that if the fight happens. He should know that they're going to have to construct a game plan against Fury where they're going to have to go forward and attack the guy. Arshadio says muscles never last in combat sport. It remains to be seen. Remains to be seen about if Joshua's muscles were too much, because again, I think people are underestimating how much the nervousness affected AJ's stamina. You know, when you're nervous, it really drains you. Actually, yeah, let me stop the press right here, because this is something I meant to do a video about, but I've been so busy the past few days. I've had so much going on, I didn't get to talk about it. Right? Big up GT, by the way. Hatman is an AJ fan. I'm a boxing fan, and I'm a fan of this fight. Let me talk about this briefly. This IFL thing. Why did why did IFL get banned? I heard that Bernd Bonter, Klitschko's manager, banned IFL, Coogan and James from the event. How can they ban them from the event? I thought it was a matchroom event. And why did they ban them? Future King says, Hatman, who is the best heavyweight? It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. Okay, Zayed member says, not IFL, just Coogan. Alright. Wow, Coogan got banned. Wow. Okay, IFL was still there. That's crazy, man. I heard they banned him because it was something like he's Team Fury. And they banned him for that? What a ridiculous reason. I've always felt like that guy, Bernd Bonter, is a scumbag. You know, why would you ban someone because they're, you know, they like Tyson Fury? I mean, I don't get it. Bonter said he was on Team Fury. So what? What, are Team Fury people not allowed in at the fight? I don't get it. AJ's next fight, unless he vacates one of his belts, is going to have to be either Luis Ortiz or Kubrat Pulev, because the mandatory for the WBA is Ortiz and the mandatory for the IBF is Pulev. So it's got to be Ortiz or Pulev next. Virgil says he won't vacate. We'll see. I hope he don't vacate. I'd like to see the Guna Eagle Eye 1 says no, Hatman, it's the rematch. It might be a rematch. It depends if there is a rematch clause for Klitschko. Normally the champion gets to have a rematch clause, but the challenger doesn't. So if there's a rematch clause, I would imagine, you know, in most cases it's only the champion that can activate the rematch clause. Will Klitschko want a rematch? Sorry, will Joshua want a rematch with Klitschko? Why would he? I mean, I'd like to see a rematch because it was a great fight, but Tall Short One says Vlad won't fight again. Patrick says there's a rematch clause, says on BBC. There may be a rematch clause. But can Vlad activate it? Okay, somebody's saying that Vlad says there is a rematch clause, and That's interesting because it's unusual for a challenger to be able to have a rematch mandated in their contract, whereby the challenger, even if they lose the fight, can get a rematch with the champion. That's very unusual. But then again, a lot of unusual stuff happens when it comes to Wladimir Klitschko. He has a lot of power in the game. So, Walt Pinkerton says, Hatman, do this on the regs, dude. Um, Twitch. I do actually have a Twitch account, but Twitch is not what it used to be. I don't even use Twitch anymore. But I was doing these live streams a lot more. A lot more frequently before. What were my thoughts on the scorecard? What were the scorecards, by the way? I don't even know what the scorecards were. But going into the 11th round, I definitely had Klitschko ahead. I definitely had Klitschko ahead going into the 11th. By at least, a round or two at least. I wonder what will happen with Vlad's USB. Good question. What is on Vlad's USB? Yes, shout out to John Seaton. Shout out. What is on Vlad's USB? I can't wait to find out. Somebody said, because I meant to do my prediction for this fight, which obviously I'm not gonna tell you what it is now because it's pointless. But I didn't get a chance to do a prediction. But somebody else in my Facebook group said, they were like, Hatman, where's your prediction at? Where's your prediction video? And they said it's on Vlad's USB. That's where Hatman's prediction video is, on Vlad's USB. Dwyer's post fight is on Vlad's USB. You know what? I am looking forward to Dwyer's post fight. I love Dwyer's channel. He was absolutely adamant that Klitschko was going to win this fight. We all get predictions wrong, but I love Dwyer's analysis. I love his metaphors, and he's a lawyer at the end of the day, Dwyer, so he gets paid to make arguments, basically. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Dwyer's post-fight video, definitely. More so than anything else, more so than even seeing IFL interviews with Joshua. AJ got dropped by a 40-year-old man. Oh, it happens, man. It does happen. 41-year-old man, yeah. People get dropped. Wilder's been dropped. Wilder got dropped by a journeyman early on in his career. Fury got dropped by a cruiserweight, Steve Cunningham, who was like pushing 40 himself. Fury also got dropped by Nevin Pikage, who was a guy with like 2 knockouts, and he was nearly 40 as well. Nevin Pikage when he fought Fury. So things happen. This is heavyweight boxing. You got big men swinging their weight around in tiny little 10-ounce gloves. Stuff is gonna happen sometimes. It's how the fighters can deal with getting dropped. Do they get back up and continue? Turn the volume up. Alright, let me see if I can actually do that. If that's feasible right now. Here's my volume a bit low. Hopefully I can do this without audio sharing settings. Let me see. No, I don't think I can turn it up. Unfortunately. Volume's fine, somebody else says. Thank you. Yes, big up everybody. Big up everybody in the chat room. There's too many people to respond to right now because there's just too many comments. I'm trying to read this one. Do I play FIFA? No. Wilder will murder AJ cold-blooded. Well, let's see it, man. Let's see Wilder versus AJ. I'd love to see the fight. I'd love to see Wilder versus Parker versus AJ, and please let Fury come back so he can get in the mix and we can see what he has still got left in the tank. Hatman, was tonight's Klitschko better than the one that faced Fury? It's really hard to say. On the surface of it, it seemed as though it was a better version of Klitschko. He did look faster and sharper, but you can't downplay how much Tyson Fury's boxing ability contributed to how poor Klitschko looked. Klitschko was able to get shots off against AJ that he wasn't able to get off against Fury, because Fury is so long and he's so awkward and his movement is so good. Klitschko's a guy he's only going to throw the big shots if the target is there. Fury made sure the target was not there, and he did so much better than Joshua did. So I don't know. Maybe it was a better version of Klitschko, possibly, but he'd been out the ring for what, nearly 2 years. So maybe he was a bit sharper than he was against Fury, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he would have beat Fury in that type of form. He still would have had a very difficult time against him, because Fury has got a certain skill set that he finds difficult to contend with. So David Kalinka says, Hatman, should Klitschko retire on that performance? Showed a lot of heart in front of 90,000 people. I mean, that's up to him, you know. I think that on that performance, he's redeemed himself in the eyes of many of his critics, like me. I've been a big Klitschko critic for many years. But that fight right there, you can't criticize Vladimir's fighting heart and his fortitude the way he performed against Joshua. So on that performance, I wouldn't mind seeing Klitschko again, if that's how he's going to fight. With that type of heart and that type of will and determination, I wouldn't mind seeing him fight again. Didn't Fury say he wants Wilder first when he comes back on Twitter? I mean, maybe. I would advise Fury to just go straight for Joshua, because again, I'm worried about Fury when he comes back, because of the fact that he puts on so much weight and he's been out the ring for so long. I'm worried about him. So if I was in his team, I would say, let's not take any risks going for Wilder or Parker. Let's go straight for Joshua, because yeah, it's a difficult fight, but it's the by far the most money, and Joshua's got the most belts. So it makes sense to me for Fury to target Joshua first. What if Fury comes back at 18.5? I mean, fighters can lose weight, but it takes so much out of you to lose a lot of weight. For example, back in the 90s, Riddick Bowe used to blow up in weight in between fights, and he didn't blow up in weight anywhere near as badly as Fury, but he did used to put on a lot of weight, 40, 50, 60 pounds in between fights. And when he fought his rematch with Andrew Golota, Riddick Bowe, he lost a lot of weight, and he got down to like 235 pounds, something like that, a similar weight to how he was against Holyfield. And the first Holyfield fight was Riddick Bowe's best performance, really. He looked great at 235 pounds against Holyfield, but when he was 235 pounds against Golota, he looked terrible. He had no energy, he looked weak, his punch resistance had been reduced, because ballooning up and down in weight had taken it out of him, and he was just a shell of himself by the time he fought Golota in the rematch. So that's what I'm worried about with Fury, that abusing his body like that is going to take it out of him. Tyson beat Golota's brains in. He did, but both Tyson and Golota were past their best when they fought. Golota was at his best when he fought Riddick Bowe, and he was quite useful, actually. When Golota first came on the scene, he was quite useful. Win Warner says, Hatman, can AJ beat King Kong? Who punches harder than Klitz? Can AJ beat King Kong? I think he can. I think it's a tough fight. Is AJ beatable by Parker or Wilder? I think so. I think so. He's beatable by those guys, but it doesn't mean that he will get beat because they're beatable by him too. VADA testing for AJ. I think there was VADA testing in this fight. I might be wrong. If there wasn't VADA testing, it'll be UCAD testing. And by the way, I was watching. I know this is a big story in the UK at the moment. I was watching Boxing Gossip's video about the Furies allegedly claiming that their positive drug tests in 2015, I believe it was down to them consuming a wild boar every week between Tyson and Huey. That they were they were getting wild boars and they were eating the entire pig, the entrails, the inside, the guts, the meat, everything every week between them. And because these, not even wild boars, but boars, sorry, not wild boars, but because these boars are injected with steroids, that somehow those steroids got into Huey and Tyson's bodies, and that's why they tested positive. That's what they're trying to say. Apparently, allegedly. That's what the newspapers are reporting. That's what Boxing Gossip did a video on. That apparently, you know, this is what the Furies are trying to say behind the scenes to UCAD, allegedly. I don't know about that, man. That sounds like a tall story to me, but who knows? Yeah, it sounds like a tall story. Hatman, why the Hearn hating from the crowd? I mean, people love hating someone. People love to hate someone, and Hearn gets the brunt of most of the hate from the fans. People love to hate Hearn, so it is what it is. Hearn's making a hell of a lot of money, so I'm sure he can take the hate in his stride. Oh shit, Hearn. He'll probably do an AFL video about it, laughing about how many boos he got. He's like a pantomime villain. I actually quite like Hearn. Now, I'm not a Hearn fanboy or anything like that, but just as a character, I find Hearn entertaining. I like his Essex slash Cockney wide boy banter. I find him funny. Big Hass, shout out, big up. Couple more people want to join the block party. I can accommodate you, don't worry. What do you think Dwyer's next video title will be? Mr. Solitude. I have to big up Mr. Solitude, you know, because he's one of the funniest, most sarcastic guys that you'll ever come across on YouTube. Big up Mr. Solitude, man. I always see your comments on Dwyer's videos. Killing me. Future King, big up every time. Seamus McMichael says, Eddie Hearn is hilarious. I agree. The Motto Channel UK, big up Hatman, and big up the Motto Channel UK every time, man. Long time subscriber, big up. YouTube account says Klitschko can't pull the trigger anymore. He's shot and should retire. Well, he pulled the trigger several times in this fight. Didn't you see him drop AJ and land cracking right hands throughout the fight? I did. AJ actually was doing quite well, avoiding Klitschko's left hook, if you notice. Klitschko was landing right hands, but AJ was doing well getting away from the left hook. He was blocking it a lot of the times, and also AJ did duck a lot of Klitschko's right hands. Yeah, he was waiting for the right hand, and he would duck underneath and get away from the shots. Daniel Carter, why did Eddie Hearn get so many boos? I don't know, man. People love to hate, and they want to hate Eddie Hearn, so, you know. It's like Batman, you know, in the Dark Knight. At the end of the Dark Knight, they're like, oh, like, the hero that, what is it? the hero that Gotham needs, but not the one it wants right now, or is it the other way around? Yeah, it reminds me of that. Shout out to Asif Goldmine. Shout out, man. Big up. Much more likable than Frank Warren. Yeah, I agree, man. Yeah, what happened to Akoli? Akoli. I believe it's pronounced Akoli. Um, Shout out to Bossman Ace. Definitely, big up. Yeah, Lawrence Akoli. Why didn't he fight? Marley Marls, long time, bro. What you saying? How many buys do you think Sky got? A hell of a lot of buys. A hell of a lot of buys. They might be pushing a million. They might be pushing a million. Yeah, why wasn't Akoli on the show, man? That's a shame. He must have been pissed that he wasn't on the show. Over a million? I mean, we'll see. They don't normally announce exactly how many buys they do in the UK, which is a bit frustrating because in the United States they announce the pay-per-view numbers. Therefore, a million, 1.5, we'll see. It was a huge event though. I mean, so many people that are not even into boxing were messaging me about this fight. You know, people that I know personally that never normally watch boxing, they were talking about it. So it's a huge event, especially when you have an event that big in London. You know, 90,000 people at Wembley. London is really the epicenter of the UK, whether people like that or hate it. In other parts of the country, when things happen in London, it gets reported on far more so than when things happen in other parts of the country. So to have an event that big in the capital, you know, it would have done crazy numbers on pay-per-view. Bossman A says this is the year where AJ wins everything. I'd like to see if he can. You know, let's see if he can do it. Let's get those unifications on. Let's get those unifications on, man. I think this fight came 4 or 5 fights too early for Joshua, and he still found a way to win, says Hiles. I agree. I think this fight did come too early for Joshua. Even Eddie Hearn said it. And Joshua still came through, and that's why I said this is a great learning experience for Joshua. Like, he will grow so much from this fight. Because he literally went through all the worst things you can go through in a fight. And he did it on a massive stage like that. Under the bright lights, with all that pressure, with all that expectation on his shoulders. He went through the worst crisis you can go through against a top level opponent. Under all that pressure, with only 18 fights. And he came through. So the amount of confidence that will give him going forward is immeasurable. The bad guy. I was laughing when Joshua was trying to embrace Klitschko after the fight. Klitschko was pissed. I think Klitschko was probably pissed about the stoppage. I'm not sure. I didn't see his post-fight interview, but I reckon he felt like he was stopped a bit early. That uppercut sent Vlad back into the dark ages. Yeah, that was a wicked uppercut. You know, it really was interesting how as soon as Joshua, anytime Joshua seriously opened up in the fight, he put Klitschko in trouble very quickly. It's like Joshua didn't realize how much, you know, he could control the fight just by attacking more. But again, that comes with experience. Vlad was actually blocking punches at the finish. Yeah, I think he was. I personally feel like they could have let the fight go on a little longer, because Vlad had come back from a knockdown earlier in the fight in the very same round. And Vlad looked like he had plenty of gas left in the tank to me in the late round. So I think the referee, I know he'd been down a couple times, but I personally would have liked to see the referee just allow it go on a little bit longer. Maybe Vlad was pissed about that. I don't know. Joshua's jab was surprisingly good. Yeah, Joshua's jab is decent. He's got a decent jab himself. Not quite as developed as Klitschko's jab, but still got a decent jab. A matchroom stoppage. Yeah, some people are going to feel that way. Some people are definitely going to feel that way. Music says, I rewatched the stoppage. Vlad was out on his feet, badly hurt. I'll have to rewatch it myself, to be fair. But my instant reaction was that it was slightly premature. Or maybe watching it again, um, I'll change my mind. Bossman A says, big up Vlad though. What a man, real talk. Yeah, Vlad showed a hell of a lot of heart in this fight. A hell of a lot of heart. That geezer on the God of War thing looks a bit like Vlad. He does, you know. He's kind of got Vlad's nose. Yeah, he does look a bit like Vlad. Kratos. Alright, this Iron Tyson guy is just like a stock record, man. I think he's got to join the block party. Yeah, he's joins the block party. How did I score the fight? I had Klitschko ahead by a couple rounds going into the 11th. I definitely had Klitschko ahead. Joshua was getting outboxed, but he wasn't getting outboxed, you know, badly. He was managing to stay somewhat competitive in the boxing side of things with Klitschko. You know, Klitschko has more refined technique than Joshua and more experience. So he was getting the better of most of the boxing, but Joshua wasn't totally being blown out of the water in terms of boxing skills. He was, you know, kind of holding his own, but Klitschko was slightly edging it most of the rounds in terms of boxing. What's next for AJ? Well, if he don't have the rematch with Klitschko, then it's going to be the mandatory fights against either Kubrat, Pulev, or Ortiz. And there's a possibility, let's say that Wladimir does have a rematch clause that he can activate. That would then cause a situation potentially where Joshua gets stripped by either the WBA or the IBF. And if he gets stripped, then would Klitschko really go through with the rematch? If Joshua's only got one belt or maybe no belts because he gets stripped for not fighting his mandatories? That remains to be seen. Marty Mall says, I actually want to see a rematch. Yeah, I'd like to see a rematch. The first fight was a classic, man. It was an amazing fight. Amazing fight. Do I think AJ can beat Wilder? I think, you know, it'd be a good fight. I'd like to see. Wilder is a lot lighter than AJ. A lot lighter on his feet. And he's a lot more sudden than AJ. He can leap in with that big right hand and land it at will. Or out of the blue, sorry. But I think AJ is actually a better boxer than Wilder. If you saw Wilder against Gerald Washington, his punch output went down to next to nothing. When he's in there with another tall guy who has sound fundamentals, Wilder doesn't like to throw a lot of punches. He just likes to wait around and look for the opportunity to land his right hand. And I think that's what he would do against Joshua. He would just move around, stay out of Joshua's way, and look for the opportunity to crack Joshua in the chin with a big right hand. That's all he seems to do against other tall fighters. He did that earlier on in his career against a guy called Kelvin Price. And he also did it against Gerald Washington. So that's why I expect him to do against Joshua if they fight. Everyone is a better boxer than Wilder, but that power changes everything, says Mike T. Yeah, and the thing is, Wilder being able to land that right hand the way that he does every damn fight, that is a skill. People say that Wilder's not that skilled, but he's skilled at landing the right hand. That's what I can say. He might not be skilled in other departments, but he's skilled at landing that right hand. He manages to get it in somehow, some way every fight. And it's such a wicked punch that it can get him out of jail and has done many times. Let me check my WhatsApp here, man. Someone's WhatsApping the hell out of me. Wilder has crazy power. Yeah, he does have crazy power. You weren't happy with the Wilder Washington stoppage. Neither was I. I thought it was a premature stoppage. I thought it was premature. Saeem Hussein says, I always thought that AJ beats Tyson, Tyson beats Wilder, Wilder beats AJ. Yeah, I think we're going to see stuff like that in this era of heavyweight boxing. And I've been saying for a long time on this channel that we're moving into a new golden age of the heavyweight division. Offer further evidence that I was right about that we are moving into a golden age. Because now that Joshua has had this passing of the torch fight with Klitschko, which was a classic, now we're going to see Joshua and all these young guys fight each other. And that's when it's really going to get exciting. And I think that we're going to see a round robin type situation. We're not going to see one guy dominate the whole scene. We're going to see Joshua pick up some big wins, then we're going to see him lose. We're going to see Wilder pick up some big wins, then see him lose. We're going to see some wild card dark horses who people had written off come back and score dramatic upset victories. That's what's going to happen, I think, in this era of heavyweight boxing. All these guys are going to take losses. All right, Hatman, let me ask you this. If you were guiding AJ, who would be his next 3 fights? Says Guna Eagle Eye 1. Well, I would want Joshua to hold on to his 2 belts. So if it's feasible, I would avoid the rematch with Klitschko and take the mandatories, right? One of the mandatories, whichever one you have to take first. I think the IBF has to be taken first and then the WBA. So yeah, I would fight Pulev, fight Ortiz, or if that's feasible, fight Pulev, fight Ortiz. Then I'd look to have a unification in 2018 against whoever has the WBC belt at that time. Or maybe the WBC and the WBO will have been consolidated by then. Who knows? There's talk behind the scenes apparently of a Deontay Wilder Joseph Parker fight. So Bossman Ace, the heavyweight boxing is back, baby. It definitely is. It definitely is. Devon Sinclair says, I'd love to see Joshua versus a juiced up Povetkin. Yeah, I like Povetkin as a fighter. It's a shame that he's been doing all this juicing, but his style, I like watching Povetkin fight. Future King says the 90s were better. Well, hold your horses, because we're just at the start of this era. We're only at the start of the era. We might have more classics in this era to come. So it's too early to say the 90s were better. I lived through the 90s and watched all them big fights during the 90s live, so I know the 90s very well. At the time, during the 90s, most of the boxing writers in the Ring magazine and several other boxing publications were complaining about how terrible the 90s was. for the heavyweight division. That's what they were doing at the time. Sometimes you don't appreciate an era until it's over. I enjoyed the 90s while they were ongoing, but a lot of the older boxing journalists and people in boxing, even older boxers, were saying that the 90s was all rubbish. Better fight tonight than 80% of the 90s. Well, there was a hell of a lot of good fights in the 90s. You know, there was the Holyfield Bowl trilogy. There was the Tyson Holyfield fight, which was a great fight. There was Ike Ibeabuchi versus David Tua. I mean, Lewis was in a lot of good fights. Lewis was in a great fight with Ray Mercer, an exciting fight with Shannon Briggs, although I'm not sure that was in the 90s now. That might have been in the early 2000s. But they were all 90s era fighters anyway. Lewis, Briggs, all them kind of guys. So, you know, there's some great fights in the 90s. You know, I'd love to see a trilogy like we had back then, you know, like the Holyfield Bowl trilogy, because that was a great trilogy. Especially the third fight between Holyfield and Bowl. The first fight and the third fight. The second fight was good and it was memorable because of the fan man. The first fight, most boxing purists say was the best, but the third fight was the most dramatic. You know, Holyfield Bowl 3 was just a dramatic fight. When Bowl got dropped by that left hook by Holyfield, that just came out of nowhere, man. Bowl was nearly knocked out clean. Tua messed Ag's career, gave him brain damage. People do say that after the Tua fight, Ibeabuchi started acting funny and weird. So maybe he did do something to his brain. Do I think AJ will be better than Lewis? Too early to say. Too early to say. Holyfield had hepatitis A for the third fight. I never knew that. I knew he had some kind of problem. Well, actually, they said Holyfield had a problem with his heart. He was diagnosed with a heart problem after the third fight, and he had to retire. I think he had his license revoked for a short period after the third fight. And that's why people were so worried for him when he fought Tyson, because he'd had this heart problem. He came back after the Tyson fight and he fought, after the third Bowl fight, and he fought Bobby Ches, and he didn't look particularly good against Bobby Ches. And then he went in against Tyson, and people were saying, nah, man, Holyfield could die. He's had this heart problem, and he's been in all these wars. He got knocked out by Riddick Bowe. He's an old man. Very few people gave Holyfield a chance against Tyson, not just because they felt Tyson was a better fighter, but also because Holyfield was seen as shot when he fought Tyson. He was seen as over the hill. Mark C says, do you think this hungry Vlad would have beat Fury? Personally, no. I think he may well have been more competitive with Fury, but I still feel like Fury would have beat him. ABC123 says, Joshua is still a novice, 19 fights. He will only get better. I completely agree. Young Dagger Dick says, Hatman, what do you think of Parker versus AJ? I think it's a great fight. I would give AJ the advantage. I'll be picking him to win. But still, great fight. Frank says, AJ defo juicing, so is Fury. Anyone denying this is sadly mistaken. It's possible. I'm not denying the possibility that AJ and Fury and most of these top guys are juicing. It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't surprise me. But we can't know for certain unless we catch them red-handed. Dog Day Afternoon says, do you think Riddick Bowe was a chicken and total disgrace for dodging Lewis and dumping a WBC belt in 1992? Yeah, it was pretty shameful. It's the most blatant duck I've ever seen from a heavyweight champion. Dropping his belt in the bin to avoid fighting is mandatory. It was shocking. But Eddie Futch, who was Riddick Bowe's trainer, came out years afterwards when he stopped working with Bowe And he said in an interview that it was actually him who stopped the fight from happening. He didn't believe Bo was mentally mature enough to defeat Lennox Lewis. So apparently he blocked the fight. Wilder is a freak in nature. AJ has a strong chin. Vlad is a real puncher. Yeah, Vlad can bang. Ben Madison says AJ's lack of punching through the middle rounds may have been a tactic. Um, maybe slightly, but I think AJ's lack of punching in the middle rounds was also down to him being hurt and trying to recover from being hurt, and also getting his second win because, as I said earlier in the live stream, I think the nervousness took a lot of energy out of AJ. Maddox Miller, obviously a very enthusiastic AJ fan there. Rewind, my selector says AJ lost his head a bit and McCracken pulled him back together and settled him down. He did. McCracken did a good job. Definitely did a good job. Young Dagger Dick says, Hatman, do you feel like Wladimir still has something to offer to this new up and coming heavyweights? I think he does, but can he motivate himself after losing the way that he did there? Because that was a devastating defeat for Wladimir. After that, can he motivate himself to come back again? Because he really trained his ass off for this fight. He was possessed. He was obsessed with winning this fight. And he couldn't have trained any harder. And he still lost. So what's that going to take out of Wladimir in terms of his desire at 41 years old? So if he can perform at the level that he performed in the AJ fight, then yeah, I'd like to see Wladimir fight a Parker or a Wilder. But NMA says a 41-year-old Wladimir exposed AJ. Well, again, I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with it. Because as I say, look at the number of fights AJ's had. What, 18 fights or whatever it is going into the Klitschko fight? 18 fights only. I mean, you look at Tyson Fury, he had, what, 24, 25 fights by the time he fought Wladimir. When he was 18, 19, 20 fights in, Tyson Fury was getting knocked down by people like Steve Cunningham, a cruiserweight. Did he get exposed by Steve Cunningham? It was a learning experience for Fury. And he became a better fighter as a result of coming through that learning experience. You know, Joshua was thrown in at the deep end against Klitschko in only his 19th fight. And he had to learn on the job because he'd never been in any real tough fights against top quality opposition. So he had to learn on the job. Do you think AJ is too muscle bound? His footwork in comparison to Klitschko was so much less dynamic. I think that it just takes time to refine your technique. You know, Klitschko's technique has been refined over several decades. Big up Cam Butterfield, by the way. The best man in the country, Cam Butterfield. Big up. I didn't even manage to catch what your comment said there, but I know you're in the chat room. Big up Cam every time. The best man in the country. So yeah, there was definitely a difference there between Klitschko and Joshua's technique, with Klitschko having the better skills. But again, Klitschko had to refine those skills over many years. So, you know, in 5-10 years time, Klitschko's technique is going to be, sorry, Joshua's technique in 5-10 years time is going to be a hell of a lot better than it is now. Bossman Ace, we need to big up AJ for tonight though, man. I agree. I think Joshua has to get the credit he deserves for this fight, because he was so inexperienced, and there was so much pressure on his inexperienced young shoulders. To be able to come through the way he did and show the heart and guts, you gotta have nothing but respect for him for that. Yeah, who in the history of the heavyweights has achieved what Joshua has in 19 fights? Indeed, you have to give him respect for what he's done, man. Taking into account how inexperienced he is. All right, I'm gonna retire right now. I'm kind of tired. I need to get my sleep in. But thanks to everyone for tuning into the live stream. I'll try to do another live stream at some point this weekend. Um, don't hold me to that. If I have time, I'll do one. But shout out to everybody for tuning in. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next upload. So big up everybody. Yeah, I'm out.